Welcome to Talking Greek Business. I'm your host, Nick Skrekis. Today we have with us internationally renowned economist, Elena Panariti, who also wears several hats, including that of an author, a politician, and a CEO. Elena, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Elena, you've done a lot of work on social entrepreneurship. What does it really mean, and how can it help Greece in this crisis?
I guess basic entrepreneurship would help Greece at this stage. Social entrepreneurship is a type of entrepreneurship. It's if you wish, a new business plan, a way of dealing with entrepreneurship. The business plan of a social entrepreneur is the one of doing something that has the bottom line of doing good, measurably good to the society and the environment, and at the same time also be able to raise funds for the company. So usually triple bottom lines tend to be a very good example of social entrepreneurship. And it also engages a specific type of the DNA of an entrepreneur. So it engages change makers, entrepreneurs, or people that are very eager to add value by creating value versus add value by destroying value. So it requires a specific type of a person to be a social entrepreneur, and it very much focuses in making change through business.
You're a social entrepreneur yourself, aren't you? Because you're the CEO of the Panel Group, which is involved in real estate and other investments. What are some of the interesting projects that you're working on, and what is the whole purpose of the Panel Group?
The basic, as you know, I'm an economist that I used to work for the World Bank for a long time, and I engaged very much in trying to understand why some countries grow and some others don't. Why, for example, the World Bank and the IMF would be involved in the budgets of countries or in the bailing outs of countries in occasions such as Greece in more than one time. And in other places, just one intervention would just be enough. And I was wondering why this was the case. I found out, of course, that the major reason that was the case is because countries don't have the basic infrastructure of institutions. So a lot of countries that do not have the basic structures of contract law or agreements, rules, basically. They cannot follow rules very easily. Then you end up having broken systems, and as a result, when an intervention comes in, it goes to only a part of the broken system and doesn't trickle down to the rest. So I chose to withdraw from the World Bank and create a social enterprise called Panel Group, accompanied with a foundation, with an NGO, if you wish, called Thought for Action. And what I do is, through private funding, we finance the creation of rules and regulations in countries that allow for the creation of land registries. So here is a relationship of real estate. So we build land registries in partnership with governments or cities. It's a challenge. It's a challenge in both hands. It's a challenge to raise the funds from entrepreneurs, from investors, and it's a challenge also to do that while at the same time you're linking with a local government or a central government of a country. But once you have that put together, which is a triangular relationship, then the corporate structure is rather clear, and the implementation is rather fascinating, as a matter of fact, to see the results on the ground. Security of ownership is an extraordinary aspect of growth, because security of ownership allows for better planning of urban planning, better zoning, better development. This is everything a country wishes to have, right?
Of course, this is far beyond Greece. There are other countries, particularly in the Balkans, that could probably benefit from these security of rights and rules that everyone obeys in the game, and systemic structures that are not broken.
Yes, indeed. As a matter of fact, I work in several of Eastern European countries. But you do need a level of commitment and ownership from the side of the country. Of course, as you know, being, first of all, former member of parliament in Greece, I would not be working in Greece because of, obvious possible conflict of interest. But in reality also, Greece is not a fertile environment to do something like that, because there is a lack of, if you wish, common understanding of what is broken, really. And if you have a lack of common understanding of what is broken, then you end up having a lack of focus of how to fix it. So if that is not there from the side of the state or the decision makers, a social entrepreneur has a very hard time, like myself, to identify a niche with whom they need to operate and make the change.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about the thesis of your book, Prosperity Unbound, which I think you drew much experience from on a day-to-day basis when you were in South America, helping countries try to reform. What was that all about? It's doing rather well, I hear.
Yeah, it's done very well. Called Prosperity Unbound, Building Property Markets with Trust. It develops a thesis called reality check analysis that I use as a diagnostic of analyzing exactly what I said earlier, broken systems. And we again identify countries that have lack of rules in the area of security of ownership. So basically, let's think about it in this way. All countries have the rule of law, part of the written constitutional right. In every country you go, there is a rule of law. They say, we obey to this and that. There is also, in each country we work with, there is a rule of, there is an element, a sense of justice. So, there is also some element or a sort of a court system or a judiciary. However, at the same time, we all know very well that judiciaries do not necessarily apply appropriately their mandates, and rule of law as well as justice is not well defined, right? There can be tremendous delays, there can be red tape, there can be decisions that don't follow precedent. There are many problems. So we can have a series of issues. One is, as you said, there is a willingness, but the red tape is not there, or the other, in other elements, we may have dictatorships that do not allow for justice to be delivered. Similarly, there is, in all rules and codes of countries, there is a code that defines security of ownership, whether it is public or private, whether it is individual or community. Yet, 70% of the world's population does not have security of ownership in practice. And they do not have security of ownership in practice, either because lands are expropriated to the dictatorship, or because there is an extraordinary overburden of bureaucracy and administrative barriers, or because there is an overlapping of huge amounts of regulations that in the end of the day, all the goodwill may be there, but unless you just dismantle everything and start from scratch, you won't really have that security. So I started analyzing and learning more about it. As I explained to you earlier, I was trying so hard to understand why some countries grow and some don't. Well, those countries that do not grow are those that really do not have any ability to follow rules of law in defining ownership security. So every individual, think about of us as humans, the only connection we have with this planet is our walking on the planet. It's a natural connection we carry from the moment that we start walking, being 9 months or 11 months old. That's our connection we have, the gravity, right? Now that connection needs to somehow be translated through legal rules that transform themselves into economic rules, and then they transform themselves in savings, right? And security of your own savings, because if you buy a house or you have a piece of land that you purchased or you inherited, this is savings. Lack of such security creates anomie, creates insecurity, creates inflexibility, if you wish, lack of movement. People stick where they are, they're upset, they're worried, they don't want to move because they're scared somebody's going to trespass them. Check what's going on in the Middle East. So you have a lot of different types of implications with the lack of security of ownership. And that's what I'm presenting. And I'm presenting also cases by which, having applied the diagnostic of reality check analysis, we have had successful results of applying security. And one of them was Peru, another one was partly in Brazil and some other areas of the world. And we also have some unsuccessful cases. The majority of unsuccessful cases were in Albania and Russia. But it is possible to transform this insecurity, if you wish, with all its paraphernalia and its output. And that possibility of transformation is what I wanted to be able to.
It can be done. It's not just the magic of the West.
Absolutely can be done. Absolutely can be done.
You were a member of parliament for the PASOK Socialist Party. You were also an advisor to the Prime Minister, George Papandreou. Now, this was at a very, very challenging time. What lessons did you draw from this experience? What have you walked away with?
I actually lived in the most difficult, if you wish, laboratory, if you wish. Because as economists, we tend to, we have equations, we have countries we work with, we observe. We never really simmer ourselves. We never put ourselves in the position. So of course I've worked many times with parliaments. Of course I've advised a lot of prime ministers and presidents, ministers of finance. But here I was both the advisor and the member of parliament. And what I noticed was that inertia was killing me. The inertia of that whole system that was carrying all the illnesses of what I was talking about, the broken system before, where you basically try to transmit a piece of information, but because the system is broken, it falls. And it never gets to the person it needs to go. And by the time it gets to the person it needs to go, it goes completely differently. That was very tiring, very frustrating. Many times I felt I was lobbying my own government, just so that I could find ways to transmit the information in one piece and not in bits and pieces. Bottom line, I actually have learned or have lived exactly all the things that we talk and write about at the World Bank, when we say that if you want to do structural reforms, it takes time, because it takes time for the system to acknowledge that it dies before it actually dies. So we were in that system, right? And that system is going through a process of rebirth. But parts of it is dying and the other parts are getting reborn. And right now we are in the second phase, if you wish, or third phase. The problem is we really don't know how many phases the resilient Greeks are going to be able to get through.
What's your outlook for this particular crisis? Is there anything that sort of jumps out at you when you look into the future? I know you're a positive person by nature, but how do things look?
Although I'm a positive person by nature, today it's a gloomy day. Yeah, I'm afraid that I'm afraid that Greece has a uniqueness to it. The uniqueness is that it's not really allowed to fail. It's too small to fail, because if it fails, if it defaults, it would drown the rest of the European Union. And there is one aspect I would say, if you look at it objectively, there is one aspect I would say this is not bad, because that means that Greece has a lot of attention, and it will not allow to default, it will not allow to fail, so Greece is always going to be bailed out. There is another aspect to it, however, and this is the one aspect that I'm a little disappointed and worried about. Continuous, subsistence level type of aid may not allow the country to really reform. I'm very much afraid that we will not get to the bottom of the actual changes that we really need to do. We're trying to privatize, for example, and we still don't have a land registry, an integrated land registry. We're still not talking about how do we resolve the issues of our judiciary. We're still not talking about reducing bureaucracy and standardized systems. We're still not talking about standardizing our way of issuing our bills, our laws. Yet we keep issuing laws every day. Yet we keep on talking about reforms. But there is some sort of like a chicken and an egg. We try to do the reforms, but we don't prepare for them. And therefore the key issue of reforming a country that is structurally broken is to reform it in such a sustainable way that it will never be possible to U-turn on its own. So no reform should be reversible. Unfortunately, for all these last 3 years, all reforms we took are reversible, except one thing.
The austerity, I guess.
No, the austerity is very reversible. You know, it's one thing that is not reversible at this point?
What?
The consciousness of the people. They know that there is no more government they can trust. And I'm not sure this is the right thing to give them as a non-reversible aspect. People have lost their faith in government, have lost their faith in rules. They had a bit of faith in rules, now they have none.
There was a bad system in place, but it was a system, and as you say, there was a little bit of confidence in that. Now,
yeah, so maybe
broken.
things were waiting to get worse before they got better, before they will get better. So, since I'm a positive person, I do know that things will get better. I know it in my heart. And I also think that, and I believe that this is probably the best thing that has happened to our country, has shaken us quite well. But will it get to the bottom of it? That I cannot answer today.
Elena, you're a diaspora Greek yourself, in that you spent many years studying and working overseas, particularly well known to Americans and Greek Americans, I assume. How can we re-engage with the diaspora community, and how can it help us in this time of deep turbulence and crisis?
I think the best thing we should do is follow some, or get inspired by some diaspora countries that have used our diaspora very well. One of them is Israel. The other one is Korea. I'm not sure about Ireland, although everybody's talking about, you know, Irish people use the diaspora very well. Maybe they did, maybe they don't. The verdict is not out yet for.
Well, on St. Patrick's Day, we're all Irish, aren't we?
Of course. We drink green beer, right? Okay, so what do we need to do? We need to bring in, through a system, we need to create a local reforms team in Greece. And we need to have a systematic approach by which we identify high-level technology, high-level innovation, high-level creativity of our diaspora Greeks around the world. As you very well know, it's a piece of news if you find a Greek outside the Greek borders that is not doing very well, right?
Yeah,
it's a piece of news. It's like the man that bit the dog versus the dog that bit the man, right? So if you do find one of those, maybe we should use them as an example. But basically, we should be strategically identifying in areas that we wish to grow in our country. Let's say we want to grow very well our pharmaceutical industry. I'm giving you an example. Or we wish to promote our agro industry. Or we wish to promote technology in the area of high tech. We should really concentrate in identifying, you know, individuals who have had this type of great technological achievements, bring them in, incubate them, and create that sort of environment. This was done in Israel. There is a more systemic way that South Korea has used the Korean diaspora. I'm not sure we're very compatible in following that system right away, but I'm sure we can get there. So we should definitely, we're a small country, but we're really strategically located. We have a great environment. It's easy to attract our diaspora in terms of, you're not bringing them in a war zone. You're not bringing them, right? You bring them in a nice environment with a lot of sun. And creating hubs, either of universities or of technical centers or of incubator laboratories would be the best way. There are some small initiatives that are promoting, they're going towards that direction, but they lack the oomph, I think. And that oomph needs to be pushed.
Can your new foundation, Thoughts for Action, actually act as an ecosystem to help draw and inspire diaspora Greeks to help here?
It's a little bit more primitive than that because I believe that we're not there yet in Greece. Exactly because I've noticed activities of people trying to promote Greeks.com, Greeks around the world, promote all these, great people that have done it. But it kind of like every time they come over here, everything turns small. It doesn't have that, that impetus. And I tried to understand why this is the case. And I think the case is because, Greeks are not ready they feel that they're in a different world. You moved out of the country and you went out there, but here is Greece. I hear this all the time. You have to get adjusted to where we are, which means that we are several notches below. So in order to be able to promote the Greeks abroad, you need to get to several notches up, but you need to get several notches up in your evolution of thinking yourself. So in order to get there, Thought for Action has decided to create a knowledge platform that allows us to think that it is possible to innovate. Versus, oh, I'd love to hear about your innovation, but I don't think it's going to happen here because we are Greece. Do you hear my distinction?
I can understand.
I don't understand it very well. I don't know if I explain it well. So the concept is very much the concept of bringing a knowledge platform of a network of economists or professionals that come from countries that were equally challenged. Example, New Zealand, right? Equally challenged. They were pretty much at the bottom of the ranks of the OECD, right? And people would think of New Zealand as, the forgotten island with lots of greenery and a lot of sheep.
A lot of sheep.
A lot of sheep, right? And we Greeks do like New Zealand sheep, right?
A lamb, yes, it's lovely.
Okay, so that's our connection. And then suddenly New Zealand is skyrocketing in every single chart. So how did they do it? Not that we need to follow exactly their way, but how did they actually move from that stage to another one? And the intention is that once you break this knowledge platform in an interactive manner, you're able to engage individuals, young, middle-aged, older people, and share their information as well and allow themselves to dream. The moment you stop dreaming, that's when you start dying, right? So we should allow the Greeks in Greece to believe that it is possible. And once they believe it is possible, incubation will happen automatically. They will find their own ways to identify. Identify innovation? Did you know that there was a particle in the laboratory in Switzerland which was doing the God particle?
Oh, the
search?
God particle, yes.
Did you know that one of the elements of the lab, one of the elements of the experiment in the lab, was created by a Greek in Thessalonica?
Yes, we do have a very famous mathematician who works there. And of course we have other nuclear physicists who are wonderful, working at universities in America, like Mr. Nanopoulos.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And then what do? They seem to be very well hidden. It's like the very well hidden mysteries, right? They seem to be very well hidden in their own little monasteries, in their own little cells. So my intention with Thought for Action is to engage individuals like that in a dialogue, in a talk, in a debate, whatever you want to call it, whereby we will allow ourselves to take our country in our own hands. Because so far, we all complain about the system that exists, but we vote for that system, we continue operating in that system, we keep on complaining about the fact that it's broken, as I said earlier, but we keep on trying to mangling together. The old system, we're not trying to create something new, because we have lost our faith. We have lost our faith to dream and to believe that it is possible. And you know more and better than I do, as I also know, that possibly if I had lived in Greece forever and ever and ever, maybe I wouldn't have been an economist. I would have just do something much more humble. Maybe, I don't know, we don't know. Thankfully,
that wasn't the case. And thankfully, you've come back to Greece with some wonderful ideas. And
thankfully,
you've inspired, of course, and you've inspired the audience because you remind us that for anything successful to happen, it begins with a dream.
It does.
Elena Panariti, thank you very much for coming on Talking Greek Business.
Great pleasure.